My name is Grace, 34 years old, and I always believed family meant everything. Christmas used to be my favorite time of year when love filled every corner of our home. This year I came home 3 days early to surprise everyone with special gifts I had been preparing for months. Standing outside our family home with arms full of presents, I heard laughter from inside. Then I heard my name and froze. What I discovered in the next 10 seconds changed everything forever. Before I continue this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear how one Christmas gift changed my entire family forever. For as long as I can remember, our family seemed perfect from the outside looking in. My father, Robert, 62 years old now, had served 25 years in the military before retiring as a colonel. He carried himself with the kind of rigid discipline that made neighbors respect him instantly. Every morning at 5:30 sharp, he would be outside watering his perfectly manicured lawn, wearing his veteran's cap with pride. People in our neighborhood often stopped to thank him for his service, and he would stand a little taller chest puffed out with the kind of pride that only comes from years of dedicated service to one's country. My mother, Margaret, 59, had taught fourth grade at Lincoln Elementary for 30 years before retiring last spring. She was the kind of teacher students remembered decades later, sending her Christmas cards with photos of their own children. In our community, she had built a reputation as the perfect mother and educator. She organized charity drives, hosted dinner parties that were the talk of the neighborhood, and always had fresh-baked cookies ready when anyone stopped by. Her garden won the Neighborhood Beautification Award 3 years running, and she made sure everyone knew about it through carefully placed comments at every social gathering. Then there was Victoria, my older sister at 38, who had everything our parents dreamed of. She graduated from medical school at 26, specialized in cardiology, and now ran her own practice downtown. Her husband Richard was a senior partner at the most prestigious law firm in the city. They lived in a 7-bedroom house in Westfield Heights, the kind of place where every lawn looked like a golf course, and every car in the driveway cost more than most people's annual salary. Victoria had two beautiful children, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old James, who attended private school and spoke 3 languages fluently. My younger brother Daniel, 30, had followed a similarly impressive path. He graduated summa cum laude from engineering school and immediately landed a position at a Fortune 500 company. 2 years ago, he got engaged to Jennifer, whose father owned a chain of banks across 3 states. Their engagement party had been featured in the society pages of our local newspaper, complete with a 3-page spread of photos showing their perfect smiles and designer outfits. Daniel had just been promoted to senior project manager, making him the youngest person to ever hold that position in his company's history. And then there was me, Grace, the middle child, the nurse. While my siblings collected advanced degrees in corner offices, I spent my days in the emergency room at County General Hospital. My hands had held countless patients as they took their last breaths, comforted families in their darkest moments, and saved lives when seconds counted. But somehow, in my family's eyes, none of that measured up to Victoria's medical degree or Daniel's engineering achievements. I made $60,000 a year, drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, and lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. 2 years ago, my 5-year relationship with Michael ended 3 months before our wedding. He had fallen in love with someone else, a 23-year-old yoga instructor he met at the gym. The wedding deposits were non-refundable. The dress hung in my closet for a year before I finally donated it, and my family's reaction had been worse than the betrayal itself. While friends offered comfort and support, my mother's first words were about how embarrassing it would be to tell the relatives. My father muttered something about how I should have seen it coming, implying that perhaps if I had tried harder, looked better, been more successful, Michael would have stayed. But despite everything, I kept showing up for my family. Every Sunday dinner, every birthday celebration, every holiday gathering. I was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. When Mom needed help with her garden, I spent my days off pulling weeds and planting flowers. When Dad's back went out last year, I used my medical knowledge and connections to get him in to see the best specialist in the state. I took unpaid time off work to drive him to every appointment, sat through every consultation, and administered his medications when he stayed with me during recovery. For Victoria's children, I was the fun aunt who never missed a recital or soccer game. I knew Emma's favorite books by heart and spent hours helping James with his science projects. When Victoria and Richard needed a last-minute babysitter for their anniversary trips to Europe, I rearranged my work schedule without complaint. When Daniel needed someone to help him move into his new apartment, I spent an entire weekend carrying boxes up 4 flights of stairs in 90-degree heat, while our parents were conveniently busy. Christmas had always been my domain in the family. Every year since I turned 18, I took charge of decorating the house, planning the menu, and coordinating gifts. I would spend weeks searching for the perfect present for each family member, something thoughtful that showed how well I knew them. Mom would get rare orchids for her greenhouse. Dad would receive first edition military history books. Victoria got designer scarves from her favorite boutique. And Daniel received the latest tech gadgets he had been eyeing. The previous Christmas had been particularly painful. My cousin Betty, who had been married and divorced 3 times, spent the entire dinner asking when I was going to find someone and settle down. She said 33 was getting old to start a family, that my eggs were probably drying up, and suggested I try online dating because beggars can't be choosers. My mother had nodded along sympathetically, adding that she just wanted me to be happy, but her tone suggested that happiness was impossible without a husband and children. Victoria had chimed in with statistics about fertility declining after 35, while Daniel joked that maybe I could marry one of my patients. I had excused myself to the bathroom and cried silently for 10 minutes before returning with a smile plastered on my face. But this year was going to be different. I had been planning something special since June. For 6 months, I had been creating a family photo album, scanning old pictures from boxes in the attic, organizing them chronologically, and adding handwritten notes about each memory. There were photos of us as children, building sandcastles at the beach, teenage Victoria, teaching me to drive Daniel's first day of kindergarten, when I walked him to class because our parents were working. I had spent over 300 hours on this project, carefully restoring damaged photos, researching family history, and creating a beautiful leather-bound book that told the story of our family through 5 generations. Beyond the album, I had saved all year to buy exceptional gifts. For Dad, I had found a rare medal from World War II that matched one his father had earned but lost in a house fire. For Mom, I had commissioned a local artist to paint a portrait of her childhood home from an old photograph. Victoria's gift was a vintage medical bag from the early 1900s that I had found at an estate sale and had professionally restored. For Daniel, I had managed to get my hands on a prototype of new engineering software that wouldn't be publicly available for another year, using a connection from a patient whose life I had saved. I had also prepared the entire Christmas feast in advance, spending 3 days cooking and freezing portions of everyone's favorite dishes. There was Dad's special cornbread stuffing that his mother used to make Mom's preferred cranberry sauce, with just the right amount of orange zest, Victoria's gluten-free options that actually tasted good, and Daniel's favorite sweet potato casserole with the marshmallow topping he had loved since childhood. Everything was packed carefully in coolers in my car, ready to be reheated and served. The drive to my parents' house on December 22nd should have filled me with excitement. The radio played classic Christmas songs. Snow fell gently on the windshield, and I had even worn the red cashmere sweater Mom had given me 5 years ago, hoping she would notice and appreciate the gesture. I had styled my hair the way she always said looked best, applied makeup carefully to hide the exhaustion from working 3 12-hour shifts in a row, and practiced my cheerful responses to the inevitable questions about my love life. I thought about all the ways this Christmas would be different. Maybe this would be the year they finally saw me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. Maybe they would appreciate the thought and effort I put into everything. Maybe Victoria would compliment the album, Daniel would thank me for going out of my way for his gift, and my parents would finally express pride in my career. These thoughts carried me through the 2-hour drive, building a fantasy in my mind of acceptance and belonging that I had craved for 34 years. The snow had stopped falling by the time I pulled into my parents' driveway at 3:45 in the afternoon. Victoria's white Mercedes SUV was already there, parked at the perfect angle to show off the dealer plates she still kept, despite buying it 8 months ago. Daniel's new Tesla sat beside it, plugged into the charging station Dad had installed specifically for his visits. Seeing their cars sent a familiar flutter through my stomach, that mix of anticipation and anxiety that came with every family gathering. I sat in my Honda for a moment, looking at the house where I had grown up. The two-story colonial looked exactly as it had for 30 years, white siding with black shutters, the American flag hanging from the porch Mom's garden dormant, but still meticulously maintained even in winter. Through the living room window, I could see the Christmas tree lights twinkling, the same artificial tree we had used since I was 10, decorated with ornaments collected over decades. Gathering my courage and my packages, I stepped out into the cold December air. The gift boxes were heavy, the coolers even heavier, but I managed to balance everything for the walk to the front door. I could hear laughter from inside, the kind of genuine, full-bellied laughter that made me smile despite myself. It sounded like Victoria was telling one of her stories from the hospital, probably about some ridiculous patient or incompetent nurse. Daniel's distinctive laugh joined in, followed by Mom's more refined giggle, and Dad's rare chuckle. I shifted the packages to free one hand for the doorbell, but something made me pause. Maybe it was curiosity about what could possibly be so funny, or maybe some instinct warned me to wait. Through the door, I heard my mother's voice rise above the laughter. "Can you imagine Grace's face when she sees Thomas tomorrow night?" My blood turned to ice. Thomas, my ex Michael's best friend, who had known about the affair for months before my wedding was called off. The man who had actually introduced Michael to his yoga instructor. Why would Thomas be at our Christmas dinner? Victoria's voice came next, crystal clear through the solid oak door. "Oh my God, Mom, that's perfect! And with his new wife too, she's going to absolutely die. Remember last year when Aunt Betty brought him up, and Grace literally ran to the bathroom? I thought she was going to climb out the window." "She probably would have if it was big enough," Daniel added, and they all laughed again. But seriously, the look on her face when she realizes we invited them on purpose is going to be priceless. Should we take bets on how long before she starts crying? My hands started shaking, but I couldn't move. I stood frozen on the porch packages, threatening to slip from my grip as my family continued their conversation. Now, my father's deep voice interrupted, but there was amusement in his tone. "Let's not be too obvious about it. The beauty of the plan is making it seem natural. Margaret, you'll mention casually that you ran into them at the store, correct?" "Of course," my mother replied. "I'll say I felt it would be rude not to invite them since they're practically family. After all, Thomas and Michael were so close, and we've known his parents for years. It's only natural to maintain those connections regardless of Grace's little drama." Little drama. That's what she called the complete destruction of my life 2 years ago. "Speaking of the plan," Victoria said, her voice taking on that organizational tone she used when running meetings at her practice. "Let's go over the timeline one more time. Grace usually arrives around 5 on Christmas Eve, right?" "Like clockwork," Mom confirmed. "She'll come in with all her homemade food and thoughtful little gifts, trying so hard to make everything perfect. It's actually kind of sad when you think about it." "Pathetic is more like it," Daniel interjected. 34 years old and still desperately seeking Mommy and Daddy's approval. You'd think she'd have developed some self-awareness by now. "So she arrives at 5, Victoria continued, ignoring Daniel's comment, but not disagreeing with it. "We'll give her about 30 minutes to settle in, unpack her stuff, start heating up whatever healthy nurse food she's brought this year. Then at 5:30, I'll make my announcement about the baby." "Baby number 3, Mom said proudly. "Such a blessing. Richard must be over the moon." "He is," Victoria confirmed. "And the timing couldn't be more perfect. Right when Grace is processing that news, trying to pretend she's happy for me, when we all know she's dying inside because her biological clock is basically at midnight, that's when Daniel drops his bomb." "The house," Daniel said with evident satisfaction. $2.3 million in Riverside Gardens, 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, a pool, and a guest house. I've got the photos ready on my phone. I'll make sure to mention it's perfect for raising a family, when Jennifer and I start having kids next year." "Which brings us to 6 o'clock, Victoria continued. "That's when Thomas and his wife arrive. Mom, you'll act surprised like you forgot to mention it to Grace. Some line about how it slipped your mind with all the holiday preparations." "I've been practicing my surprised face," Mom said with a laugh. "Oh, Grace, didn't I mention Thomas was coming? How silly of me. You don't mind, do you, dear? After all, it's been 2 years. Surely you're over all that by now. They all laughed at her impression of false innocence. And then, Dad said, warming to the subject, after dinner, I'll give my traditional toast. This year's theme is going to be about success and achievement, how proud I am of the children who've made something of themselves. I'll talk about Victoria's practice, Daniel's promotion, their beautiful families and bright futures. And then I'll pause, look at Grace, and say something about how we all have different paths in life, and some people are meant for simpler things. Oh, that's cold, Dad, Daniel said admiringly. She won't know whether it's an insult or not. That's the beauty of it, Dad replied. Plausible deniability. If she gets upset, we can say she's being too sensitive, reading things into it that aren't there. Don't forget the slideshow, Victoria added. I've put together a little presentation of family achievements this year. Photos from medical conferences, Daniel's promotion ceremony, the kids' awards from school. There might be one picture of Grace at the end, something from her hospital's newsletter that makes her look tired and frumpy, for balance. The questions are my favorite part, my mother said with genuine enthusiasm. I've prepared a whole list. So Grace, are you seeing anyone special? Grace, have you thought about going back to school for a real medical degree? Grace, don't you want children before it's too late? Grace, have you considered that maybe your standards are too high? Each one perfectly innocent on its own, but together, death by 1,000 cuts, Victoria finished. She'll be a mess by the end of the night. Last year was good, but this year is going to be legendary. The best part, Daniel added, is that she'll just take it. She'll smile and nod and pretend everything's fine because that's what Grace does. She's so desperate to belong to be accepted that she'll endure anything. It's actually fascinating from a psychological perspective, like watching a rat in a maze that keeps choosing the path with the electric shock because it occasionally leads to a tiny piece of cheese. Daniel, Mom said, but she was laughing. That's a terrible comparison. Grace is family after all. Family that we're planning to psychologically torture for entertainment, Daniel pointed out. I'm just calling it what it is. It's not torture, Victoria corrected him. It's reality checking. Grace needs to understand her place in this family and society. She chose to be a nurse instead of a doctor. She chose to date a man who clearly wasn't committed to her. She chooses to live in that sad little apartment and drive that embarrassing car. We're just highlighting the consequences of her choices. Exactly, Dad agreed. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is show them the truth about themselves. Grace lives in a fantasy world where she thinks she's some kind of hero because she empties bedpans and takes blood pressure. Someone needs to remind her that in the real world in this family, that doesn't measure up. Plus, Mom added, and I could hear the smile in her voice. It's tradition at this point. Grace's humiliation is as much a part of Christmas as the tree and the turkey. Remember when she was 16 and thought that boy from her class actually liked her? We had such fun watching her figure out he was only nice to her to get to Victoria. Or when she was 22 and announced she wanted to be a doctor, Victoria added. The look on her face when we all laughed and Dad said she didn't have the intelligence for it. God, that was priceless. She became a nurse instead, Dad said dismissively. Which just proved my point. She settled for less as always. At least she has a job, Daniel said with mock generosity, even if it is basically being a servant to real doctors like Victoria. I actually feel bad for the doctors who have to work with her, Victoria said. She probably thinks she knows more than she does getting ideas above her station. I've seen nurses like that. They forget their support staff, not medical professionals. Well, after tomorrow night, she'll remember exactly where she stands, Mom said with satisfaction. At the bottom of this family's hierarchy, where she's always been and always will be. Should we take bets on what time she breaks? Daniel suggested. I say 7:30 right after Dad's toast. 8, Victoria countered. She's gotten better at holding it in, but when she sees Thomas's wife's engagement ring, which is twice the size of the one Michael gave her, that'll do it. You're both wrong, Dad said confidently. 9:15 when we're all sitting around the fire and I ask her to tell us about her year, and she realizes she has absolutely nothing worth sharing while everyone else talks about promotions and vacations and achievements. The saddest part, Mom mused, is that she probably spent weeks planning some special surprise for us. She always does. Remember last year's homemade ornaments? As if we'd want to put her craft projects on our tree. I threw mine away the next day, Victoria admitted. It was so ugly I couldn't even re-gift it. Mine went straight into the garbage, Daniel agreed. But I made sure to hang it on the tree first and take a picture to send her saying how much I loved it. Got to maintain the illusion, you know. That's the key, Dad said approvingly. Let her think there's hope that one day she might actually earn our respect. Hope is what keeps her coming back for more. Without it, she might actually develop some self-respect and stop showing up. And then who would we have to make ourselves feel superior? Each other, Daniel said, and they all laughed again. No, Victoria said thoughtfully. We need Grace. She's like, what do they call it in psychology, the identified patient? The one who carries all the family's dysfunction so everyone else can feel normal. Every family needs a Grace. Well said, Mom approved. And our Grace plays her role perfectly. Tomorrow is going to be absolutely delicious. I can hardly wait to see her face when she realizes what we have planned. I stood there on the porch, my entire world collapsing around me. The packages in my arms felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. My legs shook so badly I thought I might fall. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't make a sound. I couldn't. If they heard me now, if they knew I had heard everything, I would die of shame right there on their front porch. Slowly, carefully, I backed away from the door. Step by step, I retreated to my car, still carrying all the gifts and food I had brought for these people who weren't family at all, but monsters wearing familiar faces. I loaded everything back into the Honda, my movements mechanical, my mind struggling to process what I had just learned. 34 years. 34 years of believing that deep down they loved me, that their cruelty was unintentional, that their dismissive comments came from ignorance, not malice, that if I just tried harder, achieved more, loved them better, eventually I would earn their approval. But it had all been a lie. They had been laughing at me my entire life. I sat in my car for 30 minutes, engine off, watching snow begin to fall again. Through the window, I could see them moving around inside, probably setting up their torture chamber for tomorrow's victim. My mother passed by carrying a tray of her famous Christmas cookies, the ones she knew I couldn't eat because she always put walnuts in them despite my mild allergy. Victoria stood by the tree, no doubt arranging the family photos that I wasn't prominently featured in. Daniel and my father sat in the recliners, probably watching football and bonding over their shared superiority. They looked so normal, so much like a loving family celebrating the season. No one watching from the outside would ever guess the cruelty they were capable of, the calculated emotional violence they had planned for their daughter and sister. I wondered how many other families were like this, presenting a perfect facade while destroying one of their own behind closed doors. Finally, I started the car and drove away. I texted my mother from the first red light, my fingers shaking as I typed. Got caught in unexpected snow. Roads are terrible. Will be there Christmas Eve as planned. Love you all. Her response came immediately. Oh no, be safe, sweetheart. We're all here missing you terribly. Can't wait for tomorrow. Missing me. They were sitting in that house planning my humiliation. And she said they were missing me. The casualness of her lie, the ease with which she typed those false words of affection, made me pull over and vomit into a storm drain. That night, I didn't go home. I couldn't face my apartment with its small Christmas tree and the wrapped presents I had been so excited to give. Instead, I checked into a Hampton Inn 20 miles from my parents' house, paying with cash, so there would be no credit card trail they could question later. The room was small and impersonal, exactly what I needed. No memories, no expectations, just a bed and a bathroom and a door that locked out the world. I sat on the bed and did something I had never done before. I made a list of every cruel thing my family had done to me that I could remember. Not the obvious ones that everyone could see, but the subtle ones, the death by 1,000 cuts that Daniel had so accurately described. Age 7. Victoria convinced me that Mom and Dad were giving me away to another family because I wasn't smart enough. I spent 3 days crying and packing my toys before Mom found out and told me to stop being dramatic. Age 11. Daniel broke my favorite doll, the one Grandma had given me before she died. And when I cried, Dad said I was too old for dolls anyway, and threw the pieces in the trash. Age 14. Mom told everyone at her book club that I had gotten my first period, describing in detail how emotional and difficult I was being, while all the women laughed and shared their own daughter's stories. I found out when her friend's daughter told everyone at school. Age 16. The boy Victoria mentioned Kevin Matthews had asked me to homecoming. I spent all my savings on a dress, learned to do makeup from YouTube tutorials, and felt beautiful for the first time. When he picked me up, Victoria was there in a stunning dress. He had only asked me out to get close to her, and they went to the dance together while I watched from my bedroom window. Age 18. I was accepted to nursing school with a partial scholarship. At my graduation party, Dad gave a speech about how nursing was a noble profession for those who couldn't handle the rigors of real medicine, and how proud he was that I had found my level. Age 20. I introduced my first serious boyfriend to the family at Thanksgiving. They spent the entire meal asking about his job at the hardware store, making jokes about if he gave me employee discounts on tools, and Victoria repeatedly mentioned her boyfriend's Harvard MBA, until my boyfriend felt so inadequate, he broke up with me the next week. Age 22. When I graduated from nursing school, Mom didn't come to the ceremony because Victoria's son had a minor cold and needed her more. Dad came, but spent the whole time on his phone dealing with a work issue that turned out to be him checking football scores. Daniel didn't even pretend to have an excuse. 25, I saved for a year to take the family on a vacation for my parents' anniversary. I researched destinations, found the perfect cabin in the mountains, planned every meal and activity. They canceled the week before because Victoria scheduled a work conference for the same dates, and apparently supporting her career was more important than the trip I had already paid for in full. Age 28. When I won the Nurse of the Year award at my hospital, I invited them to the ceremony. They said they would come. I saved them seats in the front row, mentioned them in my speech, and looked for their faces in the crowd. They never showed. Later, Mom said they got confused about the date, but I saw the photos on Facebook of them at Daniel's company barbecue that same night. Age 30. After a particularly difficult shift where I lost a young patient, I called Mom, crying, needing comfort. She told me I was being dramatic, and that if I couldn't handle death, maybe I had chosen the wrong profession. Then she spent 20 minutes talking about Victoria's promotion. Age 32. The wedding disaster. Not just Michael's betrayal, but my family's response. Mom's first concern was about deposits and what people would think. Dad suggested that maybe if I had been more successful, more like Victoria, Michael wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. Victoria offered to set me up with one of Richard's divorced colleagues, a man 20 years older, with 3 kids, who she described as willing to settle for someone like me. Daniel just laughed and said he had seen it coming because Michael was clearly out of my league. The list went on for pages. Birthday parties where my cake was forgotten, but my siblings were elaborate productions. Christmas gifts that were clearly afterthoughts, while Victoria and Daniel received expensive, carefully chosen presents. Family photos where I was asked to take the picture instead of being in it. Conversations where my achievements were dismissed, while my siblings' most minor accomplishments were celebrated. Jokes at my expense that everyone laughed at, including me, because I was so desperate to belong. By 3 in the morning, I had filled 16 pages of the hotel notepad, with memories of pain disguised as love. Looking at it all written down, the pattern was so clear. I couldn't believe I had missed it for so long. This wasn't a family that occasionally hurt me through thoughtlessness. This was systematic, deliberate, sustained emotional abuse, designed to keep me in my place as the family scapegoat. I thought about not going to Christmas at all. I could claim illness, car trouble, a work emergency, but they would just reschedule their plans, and knowing what was coming somehow made it worse. Plus, running away would give them satisfaction, prove that I was weak, that I couldn't handle their truth. And there was a part of me, a part that had been growing since I stood on that porch, that wanted to face them. I called Marcus, my colleague from the hospital IT department. We had become friends over the past year, bonding over difficult shifts and dark humor. He was one of the few people who knew about my family dynamics, though I had never told him the full extent of it. "Grace, it's 3 in the morning. Are you okay? I need a favor," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "A big one. And I need you not to ask questions until I'm ready to explain." "Anything?" he said immediately, and I nearly started crying at the simple unconditional support. What do you need? You know that video editing software you showed me last month, the one you use for your YouTube channel? Yeah, of course, why? Sorry, no questions. What about it? Can you teach me to use it today? And I need to borrow some equipment. Recording equipment. There was a pause. Then Marcus said, "Come over whenever you're ready. I'll make coffee." I spent the rest of the night planning, not just the video, but everything that would come after. By the time the sun rose, I had a clear vision of what I needed to do. This wasn't about revenge, though there would be an element of that. This was about finally standing up for myself, about showing them that their game only worked if I agreed to play by their rules. I drove to Marcus's apartment at 8 in the morning. He took one look at my face and didn't ask a single question, just led me to his home office, where he had an impressive setup of computers and recording equipment. For the next 8 hours, he taught me everything I needed to know: how to edit video sync audio, create transitions, add text overlays. He was patient and thorough, and when I finally told him what I was planning, he didn't try to talk me out of it. "They deserve worse," was all he said, then helped me organize the files I had been collecting. I had saved everything over the years, not consciously, but out of some instinct I didn't understand until now. Email threads where they discussed me like I wasn't copied on the chain. Text messages sent to the wrong person meant for each other, but accidentally sent to me. Voicemails left on my phone when they thought they had hung up, but hadn't. 5 years of digital evidence of their cruelty, all saved in a folder I had labeled family, with no irony whatsoever. The centerpiece would be the recording from the porch. I had been recording a voice memo for myself, a reminder about the gifts I was carrying when I heard them talking. My phone had captured everything: 23 minutes of crystal clear audio of my family planning my humiliation. Marcus helped me enhance the sound quality, making every word undeniable. We worked through the afternoon and evening, creating something that was part documentary, part indictment, part goodbye letter. It started beautifully with photos and videos from happier times, or at least times I had thought were happy. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations, all set to soft instrumental music. Anyone watching would think this was a loving tribute to a close-knit family. Then slowly the tone would shift. The music would fade, replaced by their actual words. Email after email, text after text, voicemail after voicemail, building a case that couldn't be denied. Victoria calling me pathetic in a message to Daniel. Mom telling her book club friends that she was embarrassed by my career. Dad leaving a voicemail where he forgot to hang up and told someone that I was the family disappointment. The recording from the porch would come last, playing in its entirety over a black screen. No editing, no commentary, just their voices planning my destruction while laughing about previous year's successes. "This is brutal," Marcus said when we watched the final version. "They're going to lose it." "I know," I said, feeling calmer than I had in years. "That's the point." He helped me transfer everything to a USB drive, then surprised me by pulling me into a hug. "You're the strongest person I know," he said. "They never deserved you." I drove home that night with the USB drive in my pocket, feeling its weight like a weapon. Tomorrow would be Christmas Eve. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight, I had preparation to finish. I wrapped the USB drive in an elegant silver box, tied it with a red ribbon, and attached a tag that read, "For the whole family with love." Then I practiced my smile in the mirror, the same smile I had worn for 34 years, while they destroyed me piece by piece. Tomorrow I would wear it one last time. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and a deceptively peaceful morning. I woke up in my apartment at 7, having returned home the night before, to maintain the appearance of normalcy. I went through my morning routine, mechanically shower, coffee, breakfast, as if this was just another day. But my hands shook slightly as I applied my makeup, and I had to redo my eyeliner twice. I dressed carefully in the outfit I knew they would expect: a conservative green dress that Mom had once said was appropriate for my figure, pearl earrings that were a graduation gift from Grandma, and sensible black flats, because Victoria always made comments when I wore heels about trying too hard. I looked in the mirror and saw exactly what they wanted to see: plain, forgettable Grace trying her best, but never quite measuring up. The drive to my parents' house felt both eternal and far too quick. I stopped at a gas station to fill up the tank and buy a bottle of water, needing to delay just a few more minutes. The teenager working the register wished me Merry Christmas with genuine warmth, and I wondered if that would be the last sincere kindness I experienced today. I pulled into the driveway at exactly 5 o'clock, just as they expected. The house looked like a Christmas card, lights twinkling in the gathering dusk, smoke rising from the chimney windows, glowing with warm light. Victoria's Mercedes had been joined by several other cars I didn't recognize, probably extended family who had been invited to witness the show. I sat in my car for a moment, taking deep breaths, centering myself. Then I grabbed the presents I had originally bought for them, including the silver-wrapped USB drive, and walked to the door. This time I rang the doorbell immediately. Mom answered, her face lighting up with what looked like genuine pleasure, but what I now recognized as anticipation for the evening's entertainment. "Grace, perfect timing as always. Come in, you must be freezing." She hugged me, and I forced myself not to stiffen at her touch. She smelled like sugar cookies and expensive perfume, like Christmas and lies. "Let me take those packages," she said, reaching for the gifts. "My goodness, you always go overboard. You shouldn't spend so much money on us." "They're nothing special," I said, maintaining my usual self-deprecating tone. "Just some things I thought you might like." "I'm sure they're wonderful," she said with that particular smile that meant she was already planning to return them or re-gift them. The house was full of people. Besides my immediate family, there were aunts and uncles, cousins, mom's book club friends, dad's golf buddies, and several people I didn't recognize, a larger audience than usual. They had really gone all out this year. Victoria swooped in looking perfect, in a designer red dress that probably cost more than my rent. "Grace, so glad you made it safely. We were worried about you driving in the snow in that old car of yours." "It handles just fine," I said, accepting her air kisses. "Well, if you say so. Though really you should think about upgrading. It's not safe driving something so old. Richard's colleague is selling a nice used sedan, very reasonable price. I could put in a word if you're interested." "Thanks. I'll think about it." I said the same response I always gave. Daniel appeared next, Jennifer on his arm, looking like she had stepped out of a catalog in a white cashmere ensemble that made her look like an angel. "Hey, sis," he said, that condescending tone already in place. "You look rested." "Thanks, you both look wonderful." "Jennifer picked out my outfit," he said proudly. "She has such great taste. Maybe she could take you shopping sometime, help you update your wardrobe." Jennifer had the grace to look uncomfortable, but she smiled sweetly. "I'd be happy to if Grace wants." "That's so kind," I said, playing my part perfectly. Dad approached, last bourbon already in hand. "Grace," he said with a nod, as if acknowledging an employee who had shown up for work on time. "Hi, Dad. You look well." "Retirement suits me," he said. "Too bad you'll never get to experience it the way public service pays. Though I suppose nurses can work well into their 70s if they maintain their health." "I suppose so," I agreed, not mentioning the substantial retirement fund I had been building or the investment property I had purchased last year. "Everyone's in the living room," Mom announced. "Grace, why don't you get yourself something to drink and join us? We were just looking at Victoria's photos from their trip to Paris." Of course they were. I made my way to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine I didn't intend to drink, and stood in the doorway watching them. They were all gathered around Victoria's phone, oohing and awing over pictures of her family in front of the Eiffel Tower at the Louvre, in expensive restaurants. No one noticed when I slipped away to put the silver-wrapped box under the tree, placing it prominently in front where it couldn't be missed. The next 2 hours proceeded exactly as they had planned. Victoria announced her pregnancy during appetizers, standing up with Richard's arm around her, glowing with happiness as she shared the news. Everyone gasped and congratulated them. Mom actually cried with joy, and Dad made a toast to the next generation of excellence in the family. 3 children. Mom sighed happily. "Victoria, you're so blessed. Some people struggle to have even one, and here you are with 3 beautiful babies." Her eyes flickered to me just for a moment, but long enough for several people to notice and follow her gaze. I smiled and raised my glass to Victoria, playing the supportive sister, while inside I counted down the minutes. Daniel's announcement came during the main course. He pulled out his phone with practiced casualness, showing pictures of the new house. "We close next month," he said, swiping through images of marble countertops and vaulted ceilings. 6 bedrooms is probably overkill for now, but Jennifer and I are planning to start our family soon. It's gorgeous, someone said. You must be so proud. We are, Jennifer confirmed. Daniel's worked so hard for this. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you have real ambition and drive. Another glance at me. I was becoming impressed by their coordination, like watching a well-rehearsed play. The doorbell rang at 6:15, slightly later than planned, but close enough. Mom's face lit up with false surprise. Oh my goodness, who could that be on Christmas Eve? She rushed to the door, her performance worthy of an Oscar. Thomas walked in with his wife, a stunning blonde who looked about 25. She was wearing a diamond engagement ring that caught the light like a disco ball, and her left hand seemed magnetically drawn to positions that showed it off best. Thomas, Mom exclaimed. What a wonderful surprise, everyone. Look who stopped by to wish us Merry Christmas. The room fell silent for a moment as everyone turned to look at me. Thomas had the decency to look uncomfortable, but his wife seemed oblivious to the tension, smiling brightly and introducing herself as Ashley. Grace, Thomas said, nodding at me. Good to see you. Hello, Thomas, I said calmly. Ashley, lovely to meet you. Oh, you're Grace, Ashley said with enthusiasm that had to be genuine, because no one could fake that level of cluelessness. Thomas has told me so much about you. Well, not about you directly, but through Michael, before. Not that they talk about you now, it's fine, I said, actually feeling sorry for her. Would you like some wine? The next hour was everything my family had hoped for. Dad gave his toast about success and achievement, spending 5 minutes on Victoria's medical career, 5 minutes on Daniel's engineering prowess, and then pausing to look at me with what he probably thought was kindness, but was actually pity. And Grace, he said, raising his glass, our middle child who reminds us that not everyone needs to climb mountains. Some people are meant to tend the base camp, and that's important too. To Grace, who found her place and stays in it. People drank, though I noticed several uncomfortable expressions. Aunt Betty, bless her, looked appalled. The slideshow was next projected on the wall where everyone could see. Victoria narrated each achievement with pride. Her awards, Daniel's promotion, the children's accomplishments, Richard's court victories, Jennifer's charity work. And then at the very end, a single photo of me at the hospital, clearly taken from the employee newsletter. I was in scrubs, hair pulled back, no makeup, looking exhausted after what had probably been a 12-hour shift. The contrast to the glamorous photos before, it was intentional and cruel. And there's our Grace, Victoria said with false warmth, saving lives one bedpan at a time. Someone actually gasped at that, but Victoria pretended not to notice. By 8 o'clock, Mom had started her interrogation disguised as conversation. Grace, honey, are you seeing anyone special? You know Marjorie's son just got divorced. He's a little older, has 2 kids, but he's looking for someone maternal. Should I give him your number? Jennifer's cousin is single too, Daniel added. He's between jobs right now and living with his parents, but he's really nice. Probably more your speed than those ambitious types you used to go for. You really should consider it, Mom pressed. You're not getting any younger, and with your limited options, you can't afford to be picky. Have you thought about freezing your eggs? Victoria asked with fake concern. It's expensive, but maybe if you saved up. Though honestly, at your age, the quality might already be compromised. I endured it all with the same smile I had worn for 34 years. I nodded, agreed, thanked them for their concern, played my role perfectly. Several relatives looked uncomfortable, and I saw Aunt Betty exchange shocked looks with Uncle Paul, but no one intervened. They never did. Finally, at 8:45, I stood up. The room quieted, probably expecting me to excuse myself to cry in the bathroom as planned. Before we open presents, I said, my voice steady and clear, I have something special I'd like to share with everyone. A gift I've been working on all year. Mom's face flickered with confusion. This wasn't in their script. How thoughtful, she said carefully. But shouldn't we wait until… No, I said firmly. This can't wait. It's under the tree, the silver box. Dad, would you mind getting it? Dad looked at Mom, who shrugged slightly. He retrieved the box, holding it like it might explode. It's a video, I explained. Something I put together for the whole family. A retrospective of our year together. "Mom, can we use the smart TV?" "Of course," she said, though her smile was strained now. I took the USB drive from the box, walked to the TV, and plugged it in. My hands were completely steady. I selected the file, then turned to face the room. "This is my gift to all of you," I said. "The truth." I pressed play. The first 30 seconds of the video were exactly what they expected. Soft music played over photographs of our family through the years. There was 5-year-old Victoria holding baby me, 10-year-old Daniel on Dad's shoulders, Mom pushing me on a swing. Everyone relaxed slightly, settling in to watch what they assumed would be another of Grace's earnest, trying too hard attempts at sentiment. Then the music faded, replaced by Victoria's voice from an email she had sent to Daniel 3 years ago. Her profile picture appeared on screen alongside the text, as her words played in the audio I had created using text-to-speech software. "Can you believe Grace actually thought she deserved equal inheritance when Grandma died? As if she contributed anything to this family worth rewarding. At least Mom and Dad know better. That money will be much better used for Emma's college fund than whatever pathetic thing Grace would waste it on." Victoria's real face went white. "What is this? Turn it off." But I held the remote firmly, and the video continued. Next came a voicemail from Dad left on my phone when he thought he had hung up, but hadn't. The screen showed the waveform of his voice as he spoke to someone in the background. "Just got off the phone with Grace. God, she's exhausting. 30 minutes of her talking about some award she got at the hospital. Like anyone cares about what nurses get awards for. Probably gave it to her for showing up on time. Victoria just published another research paper Daniel's designing bridges, and Grace is excited about Employee of the Month at a public hospital." Dad stood up. "Grace, that's enough. Turn it off now." "We're just getting started," I said calmly. The next segment was a text thread between Mom and Victoria discussing my birthday 2 years ago. The messages appeared on screen one by one. Mom: "Should we do something for Grace's birthday, Victoria?" "Ugh, do we have to? She always gets so emotional." Mom: "I know, but people will talk if we don't." Victoria: "Fine, let's do that Italian place. It's cheap and she won't know the difference." Mom: "Perfect, we'll say we thought it was her favorite." Victoria: "She'll pretend to love it. She's so desperate for approval, it's actually sad." Mom: "Sometimes I wonder where we went wrong with her." Victoria: "You didn't. Some people are just born mediocre." Aunt Betty gasped audibly. "Margaret, how could you—" But there was no time for Mom to respond because the video kept going. Email after email, text after text, voicemail after voicemail. 5 years of their cruelty displayed for everyone to see. The cousins who had been enjoying the show earlier looked horrified. Dad's golf buddies shifted uncomfortably. Mom's book club friends exchanged shocked glances. Then came a clip I had secretly recorded 2 years ago, when they didn't know I was in the house. I had come back for my phone charger and heard them in the kitchen. The video showed a black screen, but their voices were clear. Victoria: "I still can't believe Michael chose a yoga instructor over Grace." Mom laughing: "Can you blame him? Have you seen Grace after a long shift? She looks like death warmed over." Daniel: "Plus she's boring. All she talks about is work and her patients. Who wants to hear about sick people all the time?" Dad: "Michael traded up. Good for him. Maybe it'll motivate Grace to improve herself, though I doubt it." Victoria: "She'll never change. She'll die alone in that apartment, probably won't be found for weeks until the smell alerts the neighbors." They all laughed. Thomas and Ashley had already left quietly. Several other relatives were gathering their coats. But I wasn't done. "This next part is from 2 days ago," I said. "December 22nd, around 4 in the afternoon. The porch recording began to play. Their voices filled the room, crystal clear, undeniable. Every word of their planning, their cruelty, their calculated emotional abuse. Victoria talking about the slideshow to humiliate me. Daniel taking bets on when I would cry. Mom preparing her list of invasive questions. Dad practicing his toast designed to remind me of my place. But the worst part, the part that made several people gasp and Mom start crying, was when they laughed about how I would just take it because I was so desperate for their approval. When Daniel compared me to a rat in a maze choosing the path with the electric shock for a tiny piece of cheese. When Victoria said every family needs a Grace someone to carry all the dysfunction so everyone else can feel normal. When Dad said they needed to keep me hopeful, so I would keep coming back for more abuse because without me, who would they have to feel superior to? The recording ended with Mom saying tomorrow would be delicious, that she could hardly wait to see my face when I realized what they had planned. The room was silent except for Mom sobbing. The extended family members who remained looked like they had witnessed a murder, which in a way they had. The murder of the family image my parents had carefully cultivated for decades. Victoria was the first to speak. "You recorded us. You violated our privacy. That's illegal." "Actually," I said calmly, "it's not. I was on the porch, a space I had every right to be in, and you were speaking loudly enough to be heard outside. No expectation of privacy. I checked with a lawyer." "A lawyer?" Daniel said, his face red with rage. "You planned this." "For 2 days," I confirmed. "Though you all planned my humiliation for much longer, so I think I showed considerable restraint." "How dare you?" Dad said, his military voice coming out, the one meant to intimidate. "You ungrateful little—" "What?" I interrupted. "What am I, Dad? Pathetic mediocre. A disappointment. The family scapegoat. Someone meant to tend base camp while others climb mountains. I've heard it all before. The only difference is now everyone else has heard it too." "You've ruined Christmas," Mom wailed. "You've destroyed our family." "No," I said firmly. "You destroyed our family. I just documented it." Aunt Betty stood up, her face flushed with anger, but not at me. "Margaret Robert, I am appalled. That child," she pointed at me, "has done nothing but love you unconditionally for 34 years, and this is how you treat her. You should be ashamed." "You don't understand," Mom started, but Betty cut her off. "I understand perfectly. You're bullies, all of you. Cruel, petty bullies who tortured Grace for sport. I'm ashamed to be related to you." She walked over to me and pulled me into a fierce hug. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. This took incredible courage. Others started leaving, some stopping to squeeze my shoulder or whisper support, others just fleeing the uncomfortable scene. Within minutes, only my immediate family remained. Victoria tried one more manipulation. "Grace, we're family. You don't air family business like this. What you've done is unforgivable." "No," I said, picking up my coat. "What you've done is unforgivable. What I've done is overdue." "Where are you going?" Mom asked desperately. "We need to talk about this. We need to fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said, heading for the door. "For 34 years, I've tried to earn your love, your respect, even just your basic human decency. But you can't give what you don't have. You're emotional vampires feeding on my pain to feel better about yourselves." "Well, the buffet is closed." "You'll come crawling back," Daniel said coldly. "You always do. You need us." I turned at the door, looking at each of them one last time. I needed a family. What I had was an audience for my pain. I don't need that anymore. I don't need you anymore. "Grace, please," Mom begged. "We're sorry, we didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "Every word, every laugh, every carefully planned humiliation. You meant all of it. And the saddest part is, if I hadn't overheard you tonight, would have gone exactly as you planned. I would have sat here taking your abuse, believing that somewhere deep down you loved me. Thank you for finally showing me the truth." I walked out, closing the door on their protests, their excuses, their anger. The cold night air felt like freedom. I sat in my car for a moment, not crying, not shaking, just breathing. Then I drove away, leaving behind 34 years of pain and a family that never deserved me. The aftermath came in waves. First the calls. My phone rang non-stop for 3 hours before I finally turned it off. When I checked it the next morning, Christmas Day, I had 47 missed calls from Mom, 32 from Victoria, 28 from Daniel, and 15 from Dad. The voicemails progressed from angry to pleading to threatening and back to pleading. Mom's messages were the most manipulative. "Grace, sweetheart, you misunderstood everything. We were just joking around. You know how families tease each other. Please come home. It's Christmas. We have your presents here. Everyone's worried about you." Victoria tried gaslighting. "Grace, you clearly edited that video to make us look bad. taking things out of context, manipulating the narrative. This is defamation. Richard says we could sue you, but we won't if you come back and apologize. Daniel went straight for threats. You've destroyed Mom. She hasn't stopped crying. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. If something happens to them, it's on you. I hope you can live with yourself. Dad left only one message. You are no longer welcome in this house or this family. You made your choice. The text messages were worse, especially the group thread where they tried to coordinate their story for damage control. I screenshotted everything before blocking their numbers. But alongside the family harassment came unexpected support. Aunt Betty called to tell me she was proud of me and that I would always have a place at her Christmas table. Several cousins reached out sharing their own stories of witnessing my treatment over the years and apologizing for not speaking up. Marcus texted regularly, making sure I was okay. Even more surprising were the messages from people at the Christmas party. Mom's book club friend Sandra sent a long email about how she had always sensed something was off but hadn't wanted to interfere. Dad's golf buddy Jim called to say he was disgusted by what he had heard and would be distance himself from my father. Jennifer Daniels' fiancé sent a brief text. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. You deserve better. I spent Christmas Day alone, but not lonely. I ordered Chinese food, watched movies, and felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. No performative gratitude for thoughtless gifts. No forced smiles while being insulted. No pretending to be less than I was to make others feel bigger. Just me existing without apology. The day after Christmas, I returned to work. My colleagues noticed something different immediately. You look lighter, said Sarah, my favorite day shift nurse. Did something happen over Christmas? I gave my family a gift, I said simply. The truth. Word spread quickly through the hospital grapevine. By the end of my shift, I had received more hugs and supportive comments than I could count. It turned out many of my colleagues had dysfunctional families too, and understood the courage it took to stand up to them. On New Year's Eve, a week after Christmas, Victoria showed up at my apartment. I saw her through the peephole standing there in designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent, looking haggard. I didn't open the door. Grace, I know you're in there, she said. Your car is here. Please, we need to talk. I remained silent. I'm sorry. Okay, we all are. We didn't realize. We didn't think. God, Grace, we were horrible to you. I see that now. But you're my sister. My only sister. Please. She stood there for 20 minutes, occasionally knocking, sometimes crying. Finally, she left an envelope under my door and departed. Inside was a letter 5 pages of what read like a therapy session. She admitted to being jealous of how patients loved me, how I could connect with people genuinely while she had to maintain professional distance. She envied my contentment with simple things, while she constantly chased the next achievement to fill a void that never closed. She was sorry, so sorry, and wanted a chance to be a real sister. It was too little too late. Maybe if she had come to this realization on her own, not because she got caught and exposed, things might be different. But she was only sorry because there were consequences, not because she genuinely understood the pain she had caused. Daniel came next, catching me in the hospital parking lot after a shift in mid-January. Grace, wait. Please just give me 5 minutes. I stopped, but didn't speak. Mom's a mess, he said. She's on antidepressants. Dad won't talk about what happened. Victoria's in therapy. The family is falling apart. That's not my problem anymore, I said, continuing to my car. We need you, he called after me. The family doesn't work without you. I turned back. Exactly. It doesn't work without someone to abuse. Find a new scapegoat, Daniel. I'm done. He looked shocked. We don't need a scapegoat. We need our sister. You never had a sister, I said. You had a prop to make yourself feel superior. There's a difference. 2 months later in February, my mother attempted the ultimate manipulation. She called the hospital, claiming she was having chest pains, and specifically requested me as her nurse. My supervisor, not knowing our history, asked if I would take her as a patient. No, I said simply. She's my estranged mother. It would be a conflict of interest. Mom was fine, of course. It was a panic attack, likely brought on by the fact that her book club had disbanded after Christmas, her social circle had shrunk, and people were talking. The perfect family image she had cultivated for decades was destroyed. When she was discharged, she found me in the break room. "Grace, please, I'm your mother. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It meant everything to me," I said. "But it meant nothing to you except an opportunity for control and cruelty. You're not my mother. You're just someone who gave birth to me. There's a difference." She started crying, but they were tears of frustration, not genuine remorse. "How can you be so cruel?" The irony of that question almost made me laugh. "I learned from the best," I said, and walked away. Spring came, and with it unexpected joy. Marcus and I had grown closer since Christmas. What started as friendship and support had evolved into something deeper. He had seen me at my lowest, had helped me stand up to my demons, and still wanted to be around me. We started dating officially in March, taking things slow, building something real, on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. He was everything my family would have mocked. A computer tech at a public hospital, driving a practical car, living in a modest apartment. He didn't have a prestigious degree or a six-figure salary, but he had kindness, integrity, humor, and the ability to see me for exactly who I was, and love me not despite it, but because of it. In April, I received a formal letter from a lawyer. My family was threatening legal action for defamation and emotional distress. I laughed out loud, then called the lawyer I had consulted before Christmas. She reviewed everything and laughed too. "They have no case," she assured me. "Truth is an absolute defense against defamation and emotional distress. After what they did to you, any judge would laugh them out of court. This is just an intimidation tactic." I had her send a response stating that any further contact would be considered harassment, and that I had enough evidence of their emotional abuse to countersue if they persisted. The legal threats stopped immediately. In May, something interesting happened. I was promoted to nurse manager of the emergency department. It turned out that my Nurse of the Year award, combined with my additional certifications and consistent excellent reviews, had caught the attention of hospital administration. The position came with a significant salary increase, better hours, and the opportunity to mentor younger nurses. I didn't tell my family. They didn't deserve to know about my successes anymore. Summer arrived with another surprise. Aunt Betty passed away suddenly from a stroke. At her funeral, I had to face my family for the first time since Christmas. They sat on one side of the chapel, I sat on the other. We didn't speak, didn't make eye contact, existed in the same space as strangers. But Betty had the last word even in death. Her lawyer asked me to stay after the service for the reading of the will. To everyone's shock, especially my family's, Betty had left me everything. Her house, her savings, her investment portfolio. The total value was close to $2 million. In her letter to me, read aloud by the lawyer, she wrote, "To Grace, who showed more courage in one night than most people show in a lifetime. You were the only real person in a family of facades. Use this to build the life you deserve, away from those who never deserved you." My family contested the will, of course, but Betty had been of sound mind, had updated it just a week after Christmas, and had included a provision that anyone who contested would receive nothing from her estate, not even personal mementos. They backed off quickly when they realized fighting it would be expensive and futile. By December, a full year after that fateful Christmas, my life had transformed completely. I had moved into Betty's beautiful Victorian house, renovating it with Marcus's help. We had adopted 2 rescue dogs who filled the home with joy and chaos. I had started a support group at the hospital for healthcare workers dealing with family trauma. I was in therapy working through 34 years of conditioning. And I was happy. Genuinely, authentically happy. Not the performed happiness I had worn like a mask for my family, but real contentment that came from living authentically. Christmas Eve came again, bringing with it a mix of emotions. This time, I was ready. Marcus and I had planned a quiet celebration with his family, who had welcomed me with the kind of warmth I had always craved, but never received from my own. That morning, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a photo album different from the one I had made the year before. This one was filled with pictures I had never seen. Me as a baby in the hospital. My first steps, kindergarten graduation, high school prom. At the back was a note in my mother's handwriting. I found these in the attic. They were in a box I had forgotten about. Looking at them now, I see what we lost, what we threw away. You were such a happy child before we broke you. I'm sorry doesn't fix anything, but I am. Every day I'm sorry. Not because we got caught, but because I finally see what we did. You deserved so much better. I hope someday you can forgive us. But I understand if you can't. Be happy, Grace. That's all I want now. I held the album for a long time, looking at the girl in those photos who didn't yet know she would never be good enough for the people who should have loved her most. I grieved for her for the years she spent trying to earn something that should have been freely given. Then I put the album on a shelf, not thrown away, but not displayed either. A reminder of where I came from, but not where I was going. That evening at Marcus's parents' house, I experienced what a real family Christmas could be. There were no barbed comments disguised as jokes, no comparisons, no performances. Just people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company, who celebrated successes without diminishing others, who could tease without drawing blood. When Marcus's mother asked about my family, I said simply, "We're estranged. It was necessary for my well-being." She nodded with understanding. Sometimes the families we choose are more real than the ones we're born into. You're part of our family now, if you'd like to be. I had to excuse myself to cry in the bathroom, but they were tears of gratitude, not pain. Later that night, as Marcus and I drove home through streets lit with Christmas lights, he asked, "Any regrets?" I thought about it seriously. Did I regret exposing my family's cruelty? Did I regret burning those bridges so thoroughly they could never be rebuilt? Did I regret choosing myself over maintaining their comfortable dysfunction? No, I said finally. I regret that it took me 34 years to see the truth. I regret the time I wasted trying to earn something that was never available. But I don't regret what I did. They needed to be exposed, and I needed to be free. Good, he said, squeezing my hand. Because you're pretty amazing when you're free to be yourself. As we pulled into the driveway of the house Aunt Betty had left me, I saw our Christmas tree through the window lights twinkling warmly. This was my home now, filled with people who actually loved me, who saw my worth not in comparison to others, but as its own complete thing. My phone buzzed with a text. I expected it to be from Marcus's sister, thanking us for the gifts, but it was from an unknown number. The message was brief. "Merry Christmas, Grace. We're proud of who you've become." It was signed by several of my cousins who had witnessed last year's events. I smiled and deleted it. I didn't need their pride or anyone else's validation anymore. I had my own. As Marcus and I settled in for our first Christmas in our new home, I thought about the gift I had given my family the year before. It hadn't been the video, not really. The real gift was freeing them from the burden of pretending to love me, and freeing myself from the burden of pretending it didn't hurt. We were all living more honestly now, even if that honesty meant living apart. I thought about Victoria, hopefully learning to find worth beyond achievements. Daniel maybe discovering empathy now that his favorite target was gone. My parents forced to face the empty space where their cruelty used to live. I hoped they were healing, growing, changing. But it wasn't my responsibility to stick around and find out. Some people say forgiveness is necessary for healing, but I had learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and others is to walk away and stay away. Some relationships are too toxic to salvage, some patterns too entrenched to break. Sometimes love means letting go, even when that letting go looks like abandonment to those you leave behind. As midnight approached on Christmas Day, Marcus pulled me close on the couch, our dog sleeping peacefully at our feet. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different everything is," I said. "Last Christmas, I discovered my family had been plotting to humiliate me. This Christmas, I'm here with you in a house given to me by the only family member who truly saw me living a life I never thought I deserved." "You always deserved it," he said firmly. "You just needed to believe it yourself." He was right. The biggest gift I had given myself wasn't the dramatic revelation at Christmas dinner. It was finally believing that I deserved love, without conditions, respect, without achievements, and a place in the world that didn't require me to shrink myself to fit. Looking back at that moment on my parents' porch, When I overheard their cruel plans, I realized it wasn't the worst thing that had ever happened to me. It was the best. Because without that moment of brutal clarity, I might have spent another 34 years accepting crumbs and calling them a feast, enduring abuse, and calling it love. My family had given me one last gift at Christmas Eve, though they never intended to. They had shown me exactly who they were, leaving no room for denial or false hope. They had set me free with their cruelty, released me with their rejection. And in trying to break me, they had instead forged me into someone unbreakable. As the clock struck midnight, officially ending Christmas, I made a decision. This would be the last Christmas I would spend thinking about them. They had taken enough of my time, my energy, my life. From now on, Christmas would belong to the family I chose, the love I built, the life I created from the ashes of what they burned down. "Merry Christmas, Grace," Marcus whispered. "Merry Christmas." I whispered back and meant it for the first time in my life. Outside, snow began to fall, covering the world in a blanket of white, hiding all the ugliness underneath. But I didn't need the covering anymore. I had faced my ugliness, my family's ugliness, and survived it. More than survived, I had thrived in spite of it, maybe even because of it. The gift I had sent that ended my family's Christmas celebration had really been a gift to myself. A declaration of independence, a final act of self-love after years of self-erasure. And now, a year later, I could see it for what it truly was. Not an ending, but a beginning, the beginning of my real life. The one where I was enough just as I was. The one where love didn't hurt and respect didn't have to be earned. The one where I could be successful on my own terms, happy in my own way, complete in my own skin. Some gifts can't be wrapped in pretty paper or tied with ribbons. Some gifts come disguised as disasters, revelations, the complete destruction of everything you thought you knew. But those are the gifts that change everything, that crack you open, and let the light in, that teach you the difference between what you've accepted and what you actually deserve. My family had planned to give me humiliation for Christmas. Instead, they gave me freedom. And that was the greatest gift of all. If you found yourself relating to my story, if you have your own toxic family dynamics, I want you to know something. You deserve better. It's not your job to be the family scapegoat, the emotional punching bag, the one who absorbs all the dysfunction so everyone else can feel normal. You have the right to protect yourself even from family. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to make you bleed. What gift will you give yourself this Christmas? What truth will you finally face? What freedom will you claim? The choice is yours, and despite what they may have taught you, you are worthy of making it. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about breaking free from toxic patterns and building a life of authentic joy. And remember, sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is goodbye. Happy holidays to all of you, building your own families, choosing your own paths, and writing your own stories. You are braver than you know and more deserving than you believe. Trust me, I learned that the hard way, but I learned it, and so can you.